urban and rural. Um, in my day job, like Senator Webb, I'm a trial lawyer. And sometimes what I do is I look at best practices. And in August, whenever in my district, all the issues happened with JCPS, I sat down, I started doing some research, and I picked up the telephone and I called and said, what can I do to help? Let's work on a solution to improve transportation for our students. And that was during the interim. Since then, we've been diving down into legislation, looking at what Kentucky does, what other school districts do, and what in the legislature can we do to build up, to make things better, to make things more cost effective, to make things safer, to make things faster throughout Commonwealth of Kentucky as it relates to our children. So I think that's our job. So Senate Bill 92, might be your headline. It is common sense government legislation that will make transportation safer, faster, and more cost efficient. And we do that by allowing non-CDL drivers to drive non-CDL vehicles. And we know that we have routes all throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky that is not efficient. You'll have sometimes a handful of students that are going all the way out through rural areas. Or you'll have a whole bus of students, a full bus of students waiting on one or two because of the compounds. And so what's been asked, best practices, sitting around a table to say what we can do to make transportation better is Senate Bill 92. And we will allow simply that you have regular, non-traditional vehicles for transportation, such as vans, the multi-passenger vans, smaller vehicles that you do not need a CDL. Now, why is it such a big issue? Well, we know that we have a huge shortage of CDL drivers. We have a huge shortage of bus drivers, but they have to be CDL. And right now, the trucking industry has also had a shortage, and they have that competition. So what we want to do is make sure we have our kids getting to and from school safely, efficiently, and more cost effective. So a couple lines on Senate Bill 92, we made some changes, and it allows still training. Kentucky Department of Education will still require all the safety training to make sure our kids are safe. We're in vehicles that have been proven actually safer, so there's not the requirement of the CDL. But ultimately, it's a more efficient service that other states have been shown that works. So we can't expect the transportation plans to work when we don't fund transportation. We know that. We continue to underfund transportation. But what we can do is make things just a little bit better by changing some legislation to allow the school districts to make decisions to better improve their routes, make the more cost-effective transportation safer and faster so we don't have the long bus rides. We keep talking about JCPS and the issues, and I think this will dramatically help with JCPS, some of the issues that getting kids across the county, some routes that you only have a few kids on. We've seen this already work with extracurricular activities. We've allowed this in certain aspects, getting kids for different ball teams back and forth. But this, just as much as it would help in the JCPS, it's going to help in the rural areas. My conversations with my senators all throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky, we have similar problems. It's inefficient to have the school bus all the way across the county for one or two students when different school districts can find more efficient routes. And all this does, it allows them to make that decision if and only if it's in their best interest. And then the Kentucky Department of Education would decide the training.
Have you spoken with the Department of Education yet on this?
Yes. So this has been an open dialogue work group all the way since August. In fact, that's one of the first things I did. I started off. I called as a dad. I was actually picking up kids. And I wind up cost myself, and I was like, I don't even know if I'm. In fact, I was worried about whether or not I was even covered to be able to do that. But kids weren't getting to and from school. And we thought there's got to be a better way. And so really, powwow, we've had several work groups. We've had long conversations. This is a completely nonpartisan issue. This is not an urban issue. It's not a rural issue. This is a Kentucky student transportation issue. It's a simple fix. And we're in transportation right now. It's been assigned to transportation. I believe that we should get moving on it. I just want to make sure that people, the moms and dads out there, they know the legislature's working on a help for a solution.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
This may be too far out in the future, or maybe a better question, like if this is adopted for district level. But I think of like when I was in high school, I had a friend and his dad drove a bus and then worked in the cafeteria too. And I'm just thinking like, is it possible that this is maybe aimed at teachers? Would this be something that teachers could do? Like if you're talking about a van, like a minivan type thing to transport students after school?
Well, I think that the qualifications will go down after approved. The Kentucky Department of Education will lay out, and there will have to be still extensive training. We got to make sure that our children are our most precious objects. We want to make sure that they're at the safest training. You just will not be required to have a CDL. But you're right. There are a lot of people that maybe they volunteer for different parts. They've already, because you're going to have the background screening, and then biannual, you'll have to have the traffic screening. But yeah, there's a lot of people right now that we know in our school district to help out. My little girl's on lacrosse, and I know that they have sometimes transportation helps them get to and from things. So this does exist. What's happened in Kentucky, we wrote a long time ago, we restricted that from the ability to get kids to and from school. So all we're doing is expanding that. In a time where we're worried about cutting routes, we're worried about kids sitting out long hours on the bus getting home or waiting for the bus. This is just another tool that they'll be able to use to help implement that, make things a little bit faster, a little bit safer, and more cost efficient.
How about private transportation companies? Will they be able to participate in this?
I think that obviously we'll open up the guidelines through the Kentucky Department of Education to be able to set. And I think that it's always dangerous when we get too thick in the weeds here in the legislature. So I think what we want to do is remove some of the tape to let the Kentucky Department of Education lay out the guidelines. There will be the requirement that you have to have the training. There will be the requirement that they have the federal background checks and then the biannual traffic checks as well. So there's going to have to be all that oversight. With that being said, I imagine if all the boxes are checked, I would hope that people can kind of contract and work to what's best. If they did, they would still have to be within a school employee in some sense. So, but again, that'll go through administrative regulations. That's what we do in all our legislature. We write LEDs, and then the administrative regs hammers out the details. And this is really important because I believe in the local government and the school district to be able to make their own decisions what's best for their kids and with their own individual routes, because this is something that affects urban and rural areas. So I think by removing this mandate and ensuring the safety of our kids, I think we improve transportation.
That's the CDL limited. Is it 16? Is that it can be 15 or less, and you don't need a CDL? Is that the?
You're saying for the amount of people?
Right.
And I'll tell you, for a PI attorney who's been going after CDLs for a long time, I don't know the individual, all the requirements onto it. I do know that everything I've gotten back is we have a huge shortage of CDL drivers. We do not have, we're losing bus drivers, even those that have CDL, we're losing them to other, whether it's trucking companies and other things. And so they're saying by giving us another tool where we can transport kids without the CDL qualification, will make things faster, more efficient, and safer.
What was the latest number you knew on how many drivers JCPS was short? I was thinking it was a couple hundred.
I don't know the latest on shortage. I know that in the very beginning, that's kind of what hit them in the mix. Not only was JCPS transportation dramatically underfunded by us, by the state, it was not funded. But at the beginning, they were just short so many drivers. And then those that had already trained, they thought they'd come in, we're losing them to other professions. And so when we moved this, I thought, well, that's my experience with JCPS. But then I'm talking about all these other legislators have similar experiences throughout Kentucky, where they do not have the bus drivers they need. And then even then, a lot of the routes are just completely inefficient, and the kids are on their way too long, and they're saying, what's a better alternative? We're not reinventing the wheel. It's something other people have done. I don't know why we put this really tight, stringent in place, but it doesn't serve Kentucky well right now. And so we put it in to file under an emergency.
What have you heard from members of the majority party on this?
Well, just in the hallway, just talking, I haven't had anyone say that sounds like a bad bill. Anytime you're talking about government doing something that's just common sense, that's efficient, that's safer, that's faster, it's good for our children. it might shock some people, but every once in a while we'll pull a good win off here. But in all fairness, everyone down here, they represent a district. You've got to believe that people are here for our kids. We know the transportation system in Kentucky right now is strained. We don't have enough CDL drivers. This is a way to help alleviate that strain and make it a little bit safer for our children, more cost efficient and faster.
You mentioned that this has worked in extracurricular settings. What's the current law right now in Kentucky around schools using non-CDL?
So right now, it's under the same. It all falls underneath the same KRS. But all we did with a few different lines, we extended, because when you have the 9-passenger vans that are taking students out of more, as long as they follow the same type of stringent guidelines, where there's the oversight, they have the federal background checks, they make sure that they're that the individual has a license, and that their history has been put up, they can drive, they can transport students within there. We're expanding that because the restriction was they could not do that to and from school. And so we just expand that. We open that up. And again, we open that up with making sure that some really stringent oversights. To falsify that would be a Class D felony. These are children. We're going to make sure that if you put in there that you're qualified to do so, that, to misrepresent your background or to do something else that would otherwise put our kids in harm, will be dealt with harshly. With that being said, we have so many people who want to step up and help. This is an opportunity to allow our community to better engage, to help our kids get to and from school faster, safer, and in a more efficient manner.
You mentioned vans as a non-traditional vehicle. Could you see, I don't know, maybe like hybrid or electric vehicles also qualify?
Yeah,
Help save money then?
Yeah. So what I've learned as I'm passing legislation, we want to cut some of the red tape to free things up so that local school districts can make decisions that best work for them. To me, I think that's what works. And so if after the Kentucky Department of Education vets it, and then if they decide an individual school district that works for them, that's great. There may be some counties or some school districts that won't work, and others it may. I think it's real important for the state Senate, or the legislature, to make sure that we look at legislation that otherwise may be smothering the ability to recruit good drivers, cut some of that red tape, and then work together in conjunction through our administrative regs to just make it faster, more efficient, and safer.
Got time for one more question?
You spoke to the shortage of drivers, bus drivers. Did you share any thoughts on just, how some bus drivers are saying that they don't want to drive because of the behaviors of kids? Yeah. So I can tell you that's, individual students' behaviors. In my private practice, I've sued JCPS, I've schooled other school districts. I've made sure that I think I'm a strong believer in accountability and oversight. But so many hardworking men and women, so many hardworking teachers, there's so many hardworking bus drivers in there. They're just doing their best they can. And so without any type of assistance from us, we're putting them in an even worse spot. So I think that if this may better address it. When you have a bus full of 80 kids that are on there for 3 hours, they're acting out. I can see how that can happen. They're tired, they're hungry, they're frustrated, they want to be home. I think a faster, more efficient, and cost-effective route should be beneficial to everybody. Not only the student, the young kid that's on that bus too long, the moms and dads that are worried about their kid, but also the drivers. Let's get those kids home safely, faster.
All right. Thank you all.
And here comes Robin. No, I'm just like
I'll send a press release out to everybody later this afternoon with a little more detail, and then I'll send the bill out.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, appreciate that.
Robin's sending me over quotes, so she's